And so welcome back to Teen Reads. And this month we read historical mysteries. And just for the record, to give you a definition of historical mysteries, this is not Sherlock Holmes, because Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was writing during the time period of Sherlock Holmes, and so that wouldn't count. We're talking about authors who are writing about a time period that is in their past. And so oftentimes historical mysteries could be just straightforward, realistic fiction that's set in a time period before theirs, or there could be mixed with other genres. So I picked one, a historical mystery, The Diviners by Libba Bray, which is the first in a series that has a lot of fantasy elements mixed into it, and some would even say maybe a little bit of horror. I will tell you there were some scenes in this where I was like, okay, I am not going to sleep well tonight, thank you very much. And if that is your cup of tea, then this is definitely the book for you. And so one of the things that I'm going to tell you first about this book is it is written modern day. This is not an old series, it's a newer series. And it takes place during the 20s. So we're talking 20s America. First starts off in Ohio, but predominantly takes place in New York City. And so one of the main characters, because it bounces back and forth between viewpoints of a lot of different characters. So if you don't like that, not the book for you. I did like that because it provided me a lot of different perspectives. And one of the characters you actually get to see the viewpoint of is the murderer himself. And yes, it is a guy. So it's not so much trying to solve who done it. It's about trying to discover why this person is doing it and if they're going to be able to catch this person. And I'm not going to give you any more details than that, but you find out right from the very first page who this person is, okay? So the reason it's called The Diviners, well, this is where you have a fantasy element mixed in. So there are some people who have special supernatural gifts. I'm not going to give too much away, but they can divine things or sense things, let's say. And it's the 1920s, it's Prohibition, and one of our major characters is Evie, short for Evangeline. Can you imagine having that name, Evangeline? Of course she goes by Evie, and one of her friends in this book calls her evil, and there's a reason. She likes to have a good time. She's a good time girl. And that's the reason why she is sent in shame from Ohio to live with her uncle, who is a professor of all things of what they like to call the creepy crawly museum. The occult. And he has classes and he lectures, but he's got, like, you know, the finger bone of like a witch doctor from some ancient tribe, all sorts of stuff, but business is kind of slow. But when there is a murder that occurs, a murder in which a mysterious sign is burned into a girl, a detective, a police officer comes to him, somebody who's known him for a long time, and says, I don't know what this is, can you come look? And Evie, good time girl, feels like this could be fun. Why not? Because who doesn't want to see a dead body, right? Okay, that's not my personality, but it's totally Evie. So she goes, and she ends up finding herself on the path of the murderer. And she's not the only one. And so what I liked about this, and this is what you should look for in a good historical mystery, is do you get enough examples of that time period to make you feel like you're in it? And I will say Libba Bray does a really good job, if you know nothing about the 20s, of feeding you information. And she actually has an afterword that explains what is factual and what isn't factual about her books. So like the Hotsy Totsy Club, which is something she includes in here, is true and it's something that existed. Some of the other things, not so much. But she gives you this sense of what it was like, including some of the slang, which if you were not from the 20s might be like, okay, this is irritating, I'm tired of hearing you talk like this. But it does give you a feel for being in a different era and a different time, including descriptions of some of the outfits that people are wearing. Not to the point where it takes away from the story, but enough to make you feel like you're in the story. It also delves into some of the ideas. For example, we have characters who are African American and some who are white, and the idea that in some places that's not okay for you to be mixing. But in other places it is okay, depending on where you are and whose joint it is owned by. And so you do get a sense of flavor of what it's like in history during this time period, and the fact that's even allowed, it's the 20s. Prohibition gives a sense of freedom, and you can understand why some people are drawn to that. So there was some really interesting ideas in here. The idea of the suffragist movement, the idea of people trying to unionize. Some of the characters' parents one of the characters' parents is really into that. So I felt like there was enough surrounding details without feeling like I'm in a history class that made the entire book feel real to me and alive. But then of course I have some fantasy details, right? Because of the way this book is set up, that also made it feel believable because it was grounded in history. Now, as far as the mystery goes, I already told you, they kind of tell you who the murderer is, right? So I'm thinking, this is gonna be boring, I already know who it is. But I found myself fascinated at trying to figure out why this person is doing what they're doing and why the rituals that are taking place are taking place. And that's the real mystery that you end up following along on. And also, can they find out who the next victim is before it happens, because they find certain clues. And that keeps you gripped until the very end. So, highly recommend it. That's what you need to look for when you're reading a mystery is, do they have something that pulls you in? And if it's a historical mystery, is it believable enough in the time period that you're reading? I hope you found a good one to hook you. I hope that this is a genre that you might turn to again. If not, give it a try. Until next time, when we're going to be reading life stories, true life, biographies, autobiographies. I hope you find somebody that inspires you, or at least someone you find entertaining. Until then, good reading.